Hello, thanks for joining me again as I try to continue to read School Story. We are now on chapter 10, which is called Welcome to the Club. Let's get reading. Laura Clayton sat at her desk. The school had slowly become silent at the late afternoon, but she had not noticed. She had been reading, and now she was done. Zoe had told the truth. The Cheater by Natalie Nelson was a remarkable novel. Miss Clayton had read part of the manuscript during her free period right after Zoe put it on her desk. After school, she sat down at her desk again and didn't move until she'd finished the last page. Like Zoe, Miss Clayton couldn't wait to read the rest of the book. The novel was intense, but it was also funny. Miss Clayton had been pulled into the lives of four friends at a private school in New York. The plot was clever, and the book also explored some big ideas like loyalty and friendship and learning the difference between right and wrong. There was one passage that really got her close to the end. It was when the girl watched her dad. He was inside the headmaster's office, and she was outside, watching him through a glass wall. My father sits and listens politely to Dr. Sipes. Dr. Sipes is doing his best to send me to a school for problem kids. I don't need to hear his words. I can read his face. He wants to make an example of me. It's not about me. It's about his rules. It's about keeping his school under control. I can see all of this in his face. Dr. Sipes stands up and paces now, but he stays behind his desk, always behind his desk. The desk is a barrier. It's a drawbridge. It is the moat of his castle. He hides there. When he stays behind his desk, he feels safe. Suddenly, my father stands too. I'm seeing the side of his face. He shakes his head no. He will not hear these bad things, not about me. He knows better. He knows me better. My father leans forward. He leans over the desk. Dr. Sipes steps back as if pushed by a finger on his chest. My father was asked a question. My father has asked a question. I can see the question in the tilt of his chin. I can see the question hang there in the air above the wide desk. And I can see that it was a challenge. It is a glove tossed onto the drawbridge. And Dr. Sipes does not move. He cannot answer the challenge. He does not pick up the glove. It lies there smoldering on his desk, and I can see my father has won. He has done battle for me, and he has won. I stand up as he comes out of the headmaster's office. My father smiles at me, and it's like the sun coming from behind a cloud. Come on, Angela. We're going home now. My father walks out and does not look back. Neither do I. There's a power and depth to Natalie's writing that surprised Miss Clayton. If the ending was anywhere near as good as the first 15 chapters, The Cheater was a book Miss Clayton would buy for herself and her classroom, and she'd also recommend it to all her friends. If she hadn't been Natalie's writing teacher for the past 5 months, she never would have believed a 12-year-old had written it. Miss Clayton walked toward her room on Tuesday morning, bulging briefcase in one hand, coffee cup in the other. When she turned the corner on the second floor, there beside her locked door stood Natalie and Zoe. "Good morning, Miss Clayton," said Natalie, and Zoe waved hi. Miss Clayton smiled and said, "Good morning, girls." She set her briefcase down, took her key ring from her coat pocket, and unlocked the door. Zoe pulled it open for her and then followed her into the Linden room. Natalie hung back in the doorway, but Zoe motioned her to come in. So she did. Miss Clayton put her coffee on the desk, set her briefcase on her chair, and then walked over to the large wardrobe to hang up her coat and scarf. With her back to the girls, she said, "I've read the manuscript. I read it here at school yesterday and again at home last night." Turning to look at Natalie, she smiled. "Zoe's right. It is an excellent novel, And once you finish it, I'm almost sure someone will want to publish it. Natalie blushed and gulped. She said, "Do you really think so?" Miss Clayton nodded and said, "Well, I'm no publisher, but I've read a lot of books, and I think I know a good one when I see it." Coming over to her desk, Miss Clayton pulled the manuscript folder from her briefcase and set it on the green blotter. Then she moved her briefcase to the floor and sat down. "Pull a couple of chairs over here and let's talk about this idea for a club." The girls took off their coats and sat, Zoe on the left and Natalie on the right. Miss Clayton said, "Now, since this is New York City and we know a lot about publishers and we know they're located here, we can just open up the yellow pages and find the addresses of 3 or 4 publishers. Then, when Natalie finishes her book, we can send the manuscript to one of them, or maybe even to 3 or 4 at once. I'll be happy to help you figure out how to do that. And then we can wait and see what happens. Is that what you have in mind?" Zoe shifted in her chair and said, well, not exactly." Natalie said, "You see, my mom works at a publishing company, and I've been there and I've seen what happens when writers just send stuff. If we do what you said, my manuscript would just get dumped into a big pile with all the other mail." Zoe added, "And my dad said that unless you have an agent, no one will ever read your manuscript. That's why I'm Natalie's agent." "You're an agent?" Miss Clayton sipped her coffee and then said, "Oh, yes. I think you said that yesterday. What else?" Zoe sat on the front edge of her chair, her eyes bright. "And, well, we want Natalie's mom to be the first editor to read the book, but we don't want her to know that Natalie wrote, because you don't want her mom to be objective, not be an influence one way or the other, right?" said Miss Clayton. And Zoe said, "Right." Then Zoe sketched out her plan. While Zoe explained, Natalie watched Miss Clayton's face. The signs were not good. "And that's all there is to it," said Zoe. "So, what do you think?" Miss Clayton pushed her chair back from the desk a little and sat up straight. I don't know. The pseudonym. And then you pretending to be Natalie's agent, that doesn't seem quite honest. And I'm not even sure it's legal." Natalie kicked Zoe's chair. "See," she said, and then turning to Miss Clayton, she added, "That's what I told Zoe. I told her that making up all these names was just like lying, and I told her I didn't want to do it." Miss Clayton said, "Changing your name isn't the part I'm concerned about, Natalie. Zoe's right. Using a pen name is perfectly acceptable, and many writers through the years have done it. The man who wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland used a pseudonym, and there was a French woman who used the name George Sand, and lots more. That part is just fine. It's Zoe's pretending to be an agent. That's what worries me." Zoe shook her head. "But I'm not pretending to be her agent. I am her agent. I know I'm just a kid, but does it say anywhere that an agent has to be old?" Miss Clayton squinted and took another sip of her coffee. Then she said, "Well, most agents are grown-ups, but if Natalie has asked you to try to get her novel published, then I guess that makes you her agent. Still, there's no such agency as Sherry Clutch Company." Zoe said, "But don't people just make up names for their companies sometimes? Just make up a new name? That's okay, isn't it?" Miss Clayton said, "Well, yes, I guess so. So I'm making up the name of a new company, the Sherry Clutch Literary Agency," said Zoe. Natalie said, "But you said your name was going to be Sherry Clutch." Zoe gave Natalie a withering look and said, "Not if your advisor says it shouldn't be. If that's a problem, then I'll use my own name, so it'll be me contacting your mom from the Sherry Clutch Agency." Natalie snorted. "Yeah, like my mom won't know right away that it's you." Zoe wheeled to face Miss Clayton. "People are allowed to have nicknames, right?" Miss Clayton nodded in agreement, but looked puzzled. Zoe continued, "So I'm going to use the name my grandma calls me. It's my nickname, Zizi. I'm going to be ZZ from the Sherry Clutch Agency. ZZ. ZZ Reisman. And when Zoe said her last name, it sounded like Raceman. Natalie said, your name doesn't sound like that. It sounds like rice, not race. And besides, when you sign a letter, the spelling will still be the same and my mom will know. Zoe snapped back. I'm not the only Reisman in New York City, Natalie. Open up the phone book. Go ahead, take a look. Tons of people spell their name like mine. And who says I have to say my name to sound like Reisman? Who says? I can pronounce my name any way I want. Isn't that right, Miss Clayton? And Miss Clayton, now a referee, nodded again in favor of Zoe. Zoe was in full argument mode. So here's how it works. It's okay for Natalie to become Cassandra Day because she's an author, and it's okay to name a new company and call it Sherry Clutch Agency. And it's okay for me to call myself ZZ Raceman because it's still my real name and I'm just changing it a little to protect the identity of my author. So I guess everything is okay, right? Zoe looked from Natalie to Miss Clayton, then back to Natalie. And then Natalie and Miss Clayton both looked at Zoe. Miss Clayton sighed and said, I should probably get my head examined, but I have to agree with you, Zoe. I think everything you described is perfectly legal, and the novel is certainly real, so it's not like we're trying to commit a fraud on anyone. So, Miss Clayton reached across her desk and shook Natalie's hand, then Zoe's hand. She smiled and said, ladies, I think we have a publishing club. So, what's next? Any ideas? Natalie said, ideas? That's Zoe's department, and you're going to be sorry that you ever asked. As it turned out, Natalie was right. Thanks so much for joining me for Chapter 10 of School Story. I will be back again really soon with Chapter 11. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, comment, like, and subscribe. Miss Tyson saying bye-bye.